Hello and welcome to Gotham Sound TV. I am very excited to bring an off-mic series with Danny Michael. Danny.
Hi.
Hi. Thank you for being here.
Sure, happy to.
So I think the first thing we should sort of give people a sense of is you are a production sound mixer. Mm-hmm. And we're going to show some clips and talk about some clips. And you've been at the production sound mixing game for a couple of weeks now.
Yeah.
And so we'll talk about how the industry has changed.
All right.
So yeah, I guess let's get started. How did you get started in the business?
Ooh, I had a good friend in high school whose father worked on small movies, small like documentaries and what have you. And the summer we graduated Forest Hills High, we went off with him. That was summer 1970, it was the year after Woodstock. We went to Woodstock and did a documentary where I did sound. I mainly did sound. I did some camera, learned about editing, but just kind of got my feet wet. And we both went on to college, but found that in our free time, we would gravitate back and work on more of his dad's, my friend's dad's projects on the weekends or whenever we had.
Were you interested in filmmaking as a kid, or enacting plays?
I don't think in the early 70s we thought of it as something you did.
Uh-huh.
You know, and even as I was doing it, I wasn't thinking it was a career. I thought it was just something that's been enjoyable to do, you know.
Uh-huh.
But when I graduated college, next thing I knew, I was getting an Nagra, and I got a microphone. And
Where'd you go to school?
It's a Hunter College.
Uh-huh.
And I started working on projects with friends who knew me, and you know, as you know, that kind of just develops into, you know, a snowball effect is what we used to say. And I think I would say somewhere around 76, which is when I joined a union, was when I was starting to make a living at it.
Uh-huh. Do you, in that time before 76, had you only done documentaries, or?
No, I did a low-budget feature, and those days that really was low budget. The summer that I graduated college, 74.
Mm-hmm.
And then most of everything else was, you know, documentary in nature. Yeah.
Do you remember the first job where you got paid and you thought, you know, I think I might do this as a living? Was there a moment for you?
I'm not sure that I remember. I would say for the longest time I wasn't really interested in doing features. I was very happy doing documentaries. I felt features, you know, just dragged on, and I liked the immediacy of documentaries. But it wasn't my first real feature, but the first one that I felt any significance about was Alamo Bay, which is a Louis Malle movie.
Uh-huh.
And Louis specifically hired me because I didn't have that many feature credits, but in fact had documentary credits, which he very much appreciated.
What do you think that difference meant to him?
It meant to him that he knew that I would get the sound, that in documentaries you had to get the sound. So he just assumed that mentality would travel over to doing a feature.
Yeah. That's interesting. It's also kind of amazing that your first, is that true? Your first real feature was with Louis Malle?
I did some others, but I mean, that was the one where, for me, it meant a great deal. And
the experience of working with Louis Malle, was that all you had hoped it would be? Did he really take advantage of your documentary skills?
Yeah, it was really great. You know, he didn't, although he spoke English, he didn't, you know, the subtleties of the language, you know, passed him, and So often I would go up and say, you know, Louis, what they're saying doesn't sound right. It should be more like. And he goes, oh, that's really good, you know, whatever. And you know, he was married to Candice Bergen at the time, and I have the distinct pleasure of saying that she was my cable person for one scene.
Amazing. How'd she do?
She did fine.
That's great.
Who would complain?
That's fantastic. That kind of relationship with directors, is that something that's important to you as a sound person?
Yes, that's very important.
I mean, is there, what separates somebody that has an aptitude for sound equipment versus somebody that mixes feature films?
It's funny, I used to joke, I don't say this anymore, and it probably will sound bad, but I used to say to people, there are much better sound people than I am, but no one who's as good. And really all I meant by that, I wasn't tooting my own horn, but I was trying to say that technically I wasn't, you know, there were many more sound people who were much more technically capable than I was. But that for me, sound was more than just the technical job, that there was a relationship that you had with a director and with actors and with the script, and it really meant something to me. And those are the kind of things that must seem very odd to be discussing in any kind of technical forum like this, because I don't think it exists in the mentality of most people.
Well, I think it's an important distinction to make. I mean, it's something that I personally have noticed in terms of difference between sound mixers that work at the very highest levels and people that are starting out. I think, you know, when I started out, yeah, the gear was a big part of it. And I think, well, I would curious to hear what you would say. What is the role of a sound mixer on a feature film?
I mean, I always feel my role is what the director wants it to be. You know, directors might be a very different breed now than they were before. In the old days, what I called the old days, you really didn't have all the tools for improving the sound, and you kind of had to make it work. Somehow you had to get the sound, and directors relied on that. We didn't have multiple tracks. We didn't have sophisticated radio mics. You know, you kind of had to make it happen. And so my relationship with directors was that we'd figure out a way to make it work. And that was important.
And there would there be a collaboration? Did you feel like it was a collaborative effort?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's still the director and there are still actors, but you know, some directors considered the sound as important as the picture, and others, you know, might not have felt that way. But the bottom line is, in the day before multi-track recording, you basically had one, possibly two tracks, and everything was mixed down to it. And you committed to that mix.
I want to go into a clip first, but I want us to come back to this idea of mixing to one track and how that's changed. But let's go to our Mississippi Burning clip. Right, that's the earliest clip that we have. Is there anything that you want to set up in terms of context for people to see? You know, what should we be listening for?
First, I don't want to set it up. I actually think it'd be more helpful for you to just watch the clip, and we could talk about what exactly this director sound person relationship
Good. Before we roll, I do want to say all of these clips, to some extent or another, have language and situations that may not be suitable for young viewers, and so this is a warning. Yeah, having said that, let's watch Mississippi Burning.
Great.
I love Mississippi. They hate Mississippi. They hate us because we present a shining example of successful segregation. These northern students, with their atheist communist bosses that have come into our community this summer with the wish to destroy it, this week have taken a terrible blow. This week, their cause has been crippled. This week, all of these federal policemen you see out here prying into our lives, violating our civil liberties, have learned that they are powerless against us if every single Anglo-Saxon Christian one of us stands together. This week.
Ward, your company, sir. You got no right to be here. This is a political meeting.
Doesn't smell that way to me, Deputy.
It's a goddamn political meeting, Hooper boy.
Oh, it looks like a political meeting, but smells more like Klan to me. With or without the Halloween costumes. Gentlemen?
In the courts of Mississippi, they have been reminded that they cannot by force turn our communities into replicas of their communities. Communities in which Negroes run riot, unrestrained and unpunished, as they do this summer in the streets of Harlem, or they do in the streets of Oakland, or they do in the streets of Chicago.
For the benefit of people watching who may not be super familiar with film production, can you break down how that was shot?
Yeah, I mean, this was one of those tough moments for me. In the day, that movie was done with a two-man crew, myself and my boom person. And we had set up speakers so that we could amplify the sound. And what we first did is what we traditionally did in those days. We would shoot the wide coverage first because there was all this audience involved, and you could see a lot of young kids and what have you. We were shooting at night, clearly. So we did the wide shots, and as I said, the microphone is amplified through the speaker system. So my boom person was somewhere up high in the crowd, miking to get the ambience of the crowd, but also the ambience of the speakers, you know, that live sound. So finally we were getting to the point where we were going to do the tight shot, which is how that scene starts. And we did what you always do. We turned off the speakers so we could get a nice dry track that would be controllable.
Right.
Well, that's what the term we always used to use. We can control the track.
In post, they could add the sound, the speaker effect later. That was your intention. You wanted it clean.
Yeah, I mean, this wasn't just my decision. It was just a thing where we said, oh, well, how should we should do, you know. So the actor was Stephen Tobolowsky, and he did this take, and it was awful. And everyone didn't think that. I mean, no one really thought about it, but he no longer had the control of the crowd.
Right.
And we got this nice dry track, and they were saying, okay, well, let's move on. And I went up to Alan Parker, the director, and I said, Alan, that was a terrible mistake. And he said, what do you mean? And I said, it just sounded bad, and I really think we should do it with the speakers. I said, you know, it it just helps him and it helps the crowd, and
Yeah.
that would be what they would use. They'd use that sound from the close-up. And he said, but, you know, there's a lot to ask, you know.
You're
Everyone's
basically
been up.
marrying.
Everyone's been up, you know, it's late, and I'm to ask these people to do one more take.
Because the extras hadn't been released there.
Yeah.
Hadn't been released yet. And also you're marrying the sound of the speakers to the sound of the close-up at that point.
Right, but you'd never be able to duplicate.
Right.
And he said, okay, let's do it. We'll do it one more time. And we did it like we did in the wide shots, except we shot it close. And what you hear, you know, that live, that real feeling
Yeah.
is because that's the way we did it. You'd never be able to make that work.
Yeah. Do you remember your mic positions at that point during the close-up? Was the mic on the podium live?
Yeah, we put a Shep's capsule inside that mic.
And your boom person, were they miking the crowd at
Yeah,
that
he
point?
was way out deep.
Yeah.
And you know, we only had 2 tracks. So
Right.
that's all they'd be able to play with. But what you heard is ultimately 2 tracks using, you know, more or less of that ambient track.
Right. When you mixed the 2 tracks, back in the 2-track days, did you mix each track at its full modulation, or did you listen in mono and mix accordingly so that they just 50-50?
No, they were
combined?
full modulation.
Okay.
And in the days
Yeah.
where we were doing magnetic transfers, you would write a note to the transfer person, and I would say, like if it was a wide shot, I'd say maybe use 50 and 50% of each track.
Right.
And then as we got closer, I'd say use a little less of the ambience track. You know, I'd give them some percentage, whatever it was.
And your instructions to the transfer person would be for dailies and
Yeah,
for getting
exactly.
through the picture cuts.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you that was a choice you made to put your technician hat down and put your storyteller
a real
hat.
pit in my stomach. I mean, I remember
Uh-huh.
just going and saying, and he knew ultimately that I was right,
Uh-huh.
but it was the whole thing of like getting people, not giving them a break and just going one more time.
Yeah.
But
It
what you saw is the result of that. It's not from any other take.
It paid off. And so that's something I was alluding to earlier about, I think sound mixers, when they're really at the top of the sort of game, are closer to storytellers in a way, or facilitate the storytelling over the technical choices.
Right.
Is that fair to say?
I often say whenever we're doing scenes where there's somebody that's like at a podium mic or what have you, that we should amplify it, and because it's good for the actor to get the feedback from the crowd that's hearing what they're saying, and for the crowd, you know, to get the sense that they're in a real situation.
Right. And even the actor hears their voice come back to them. And
it means it's...
But it's a really tough call. I know that pit feeling. It's tough.
Yeah.
I think that we're going in chronological order in terms of clips.
Okay.
So that brings Glengarry Glen Ross is the next clip that we have.
Okay.
And is there anything you want to set up?
Well, just that this is a similar situation. It was a film that hardly any radio mics were used, certainly not in any of the office scenes. So it was pretty much always a 2-boom situation, or it might have been a stash mic. Again, we were mainly shooting with 1 camera, so if we had a wide shot and someone deep had something to say, we might have a mic there to sweeten it, but we'd still, in principle, keep it feeling wide.
And you were with a 3-person crew at this point?
Yes.
Okay.
So we had 2 boom people.
All right. Let's watch the clip and then talk about working with boom people. All right, so again, just a warning if you have young kids in the room or are offended by language. There's some language in this clip. All right, let's watch Glengarry Glen Ross.
I ain't going out today. I'm going home. I'm going home because nothing's accomplished here. Anybody talks to this guy.
Guess what the machine did?
Fuck the machine.
Mountain View, 8 units.
Cops got no right to talk to me that way. I did not rob the place.
Did you hear what I said?
Yeah, he closed the deal.
8 units, Mountain View.
You did that?
Yeah.
Fuck you.
Guess who?
When?
Just now.
Guess who?
You just this morning?
Harriet and blah blah Nyborg.
You did that?
Yeah, $82,000.
Those fucking deadbeats.
My ass. I told him, hey, listen to this.
Hey, I don't want to hear your fucking war stories.
Fuck you, Dave.
I said you have to believe in yourself.
Give me a lead. I'm going out. I'm getting out.
You must
No, fuck the
believe in
leads. I'm
yourself.
going home.
Hey, fuck me, Bruce. How do you believe in yourself?
We haven't got a lead.
Why not?
They took him.
Hey, the fucking garbage any case. Oh, goddamn.
You know, you look around, you say, this one has so-and-so, I got nothing. Well, why? Why don't I get the opportunities?
Did they steal the contracts?
Fuck you, kid.
Harriet, I want to tell you something.
Fuck's that supposed to
Hey,
mean?
will you shut up? I'm telling him something.
Can we get some coffee?
How you doing?
Fine.
Uh-huh.
If anybody's going out, I could use some coffee.
Now, you do get the opportunity.
Fuck is that supposed to mean?
You do get the opportunities. You get them as I get them, as everybody
Ricky,
gets them.
that I don't care they stole the contracts.
Now, I got them in the kitchen. I'm eating their crumb cake.
What does that mean?
It means, Dave, you haven't closed a good one in a month. None of my business. You want to push me to answer you. So you haven't got a contract to get stolen and so forth.
You got a mean streak in you, Ricky. You
Yeah,
know
but let
that?
me
Shut the
tell him
fuck
this.
up. Ricky, you got a mean streak in you. And what the fuck are you babbling about? You bring that shit up on my volume? You were on a bear. When I brought it up to you, you'd harbor it. You'd harbor it a long, long while, and you'd be right.
Who said fuck the machine?
Fuck the machine? Fuck the machine? Fuck the machine! What is this, courtesy class? You're fucked, Rick. Are you fucking nuts? You're hot, so you think you're the ruler of this place.
Hey, wait a
You
minute,
want to...
Dave.
Shut up!
Okay.
You want to decide who should be dealt with how? Is that it? I come in the fucking office today, get humiliated by some jag-off cop. I get accused of... I get this shit thrown in my face by you, you genuine shit, because you're top name on the board!
Is that what I did, Dave? I humiliated you. Oh, my God, I'm sorry.
Sitting on top of the world. Sitting on top of the world. Everything's fucking peach fuzz.
And I don't get a moment to spare for some bust-out humanitarian down on his luck lately. Oh, fuck you, Dave. You know you got a big mouth. You make a close, this whole place stinks with your farts for a week. How much you just ingested. Oh, what a big man you are. Hey, let me buy you a pack of gum. I'll show you how to chew it. Ooh. Your pal closes, all that comes out of your mouth is bile. Ooh. How fucked up you are.
Who's my pal, Vicky? What are you? And what are you, Ricky, huh? Bishop Sheen? What the fuck are you, Mr. Slick? What the fuck are you, friend of the working man? Big deal. Fuck you! You got the memory of a fucking fly! I never liked you anyway.
What is this, your farewell speech?
Going home.
Your farewell to the troops?
I'm not going home. I'm going to Wisconsin.
Have a good trip.
Oh, fuck you! Fuck the lot of you! Fuck you all!
You were saying?
So good. Why not just put wires on everybody? You know, why bother booming?
Oh boy. Well, wires would still have to be mixed. We're not at the point where we had separate tracks, but that's a funny question to ask me anyway, because I would have avoided that like the plague. No, this is another opportunity where there's all this overlapping dialogue, and it feels right to play it the way you see it. And there is no such thing as someone being off mic, even if they were off camera. We always moved the mics to protect for any overlaps.
And yeah, so it's David Mamet, and he's you know,
Right.
famous for overlaps and
Yep.
you know, sort of right on top of each other.
Exactly.
So that's a huge consideration. Phenomenal boom work.
Right.
In that phenomenal capture of that tremendous dynamic range. I mean, people are going from muttering under their breath to
Right.
screaming. But there's also something that's really striking, and my question was facetious about radio mics, I hope everybody knows, that it's beautiful camera perspective.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, people sound like where they are.
Right.
And,
Yeah.
and it's wonderful to hear.
Right. Well, you can do that when you're doing, as a lot of these shows where, one camera, primarily one camera shoots. There was a composition and it was very specific, and there were camera moves that were amazing. There were no marks because you couldn't, it was a linoleum floor and you really couldn't mark, and the actors kind of hit marks that they thought they should be hitting, and if they didn't, they didn't.
And so I take it it's not like that anymore in terms of one camera. And
No, I mean, every once in a while you'll be on a show that might, be more of a one-camera show, but
what's the norm?
I think the economics of it is, that there's at least two cameras, and they may or may not be complementary sizes.
Right. Meaning they might be wide and tight of the same
Right.
thing.
Which, forces a whole other set of decisions.
Can we talk about that for a second? Because I often wonder if it really is more economical. I see more than twice as much fussing sometimes over two cameras. And I wondered, if they just shot the wide shot as a wide shot and a close-up as a close-up, it would look better and less fussing.
Right.
Do you have an opinion about that?
I think often it's not quicker, it's just more. There's just more material. And people just don't feel comfortable unless they're getting the most material that they possibly can, even if there's a shot that might compromise or alter the way the sound is collected, it's being done because there's a chance that there'll be something interesting, even if it's a couple of seconds,
right.
or if it's one line. So that's the long fought battle that continues on nowadays, because it's all well and good if you have to wire people and the wardrobe is appropriate for it and makes it doesn't sound awful, then that's great. You can do that. What I find I do is I will wire if I need to, and use it sporadically. Use it when I have to, and maybe because we have someone deep in a room, we'll use the wire to sweeten them, and then when they get within the boom range, then we'll just be all boom again.
Do you? I wonder if you could walk me through. We know a job like that. You know what to expect based on the director, but he would do a blocking rehearsal. I would imagine you and your crew saw a blocking rehearsal for that.
Yeah.
And how do you start to devise a strategy once you see the blocking?
Are we talking about Glengarry?
The Glengarry clip, yeah. Or in general, if you can't.
Yeah,
remember
no,
that day.
I'd have to be conscious about where, who we think is the primary boom is going to be moving with. Then we figure out who that second boom is going to be moving with, and then we figure out if there's something we can't get. And that's when we may resort to, like a deep stash or something like that, to, make that little bit of a difference. But it's really complicated. There was one shot where Ed Harris had walked way in the foreground, and they were still talking at the desk.
Right.
And all of that information is equally important, but I guess somebody could have said, well, they should have been mic'd, and you could, but I liked the fact that it looked like, it sounded like what it looked like.
Yeah.
That's,
The result speaks for itself.
yeah.
Before we move on to the next clip, you brought something to show us. This is
Yeah.
a lav.
I brought a lav from what I'll call
Is
the
this
old days.
Glengarry Glen Ross era, or is this Mississippi Burning era?
Yeah, this is like Mississippi Burning. Maybe we had trim mics for Glengarry, but Glengarry yeah, this was like an old Sony ECM
just bring it
50.
right- yeah.
There. Sony ECM 50 and the nice little windscreen that used to go with it.
It's subtle.
So imagine having to secure this onto somebody's shirt. That was always the challenge. And then if it was windy, heaven forbid, you'd have to have this big blob. And, you know, it was a challenge. And all we really had, we didn't have moleskin and any fancy tapes. We had basically gaffer tape. So we would take gaffer tape and try somehow to secure that mic.
And hope that it would be quiet.
Yeah.
You could fit 12 B6s
Well, they weren't.
in that, by the
They
way.
weren't as. In all fairness, they weren't as sensitive as the mics that we use now. So maybe there was a little bit of that, but no, it was kind of comical.
Yeah. 8 Mile. So is there anything to set up for this? It's a rap battle.
Yeah. 8 Mile was directed by a very traditional director, Curtis Hanson, who, when he met with the music supervisor and I, Bob Shaper was the music supervisor, he said he assumed that it would all be playback, and we said no, in fact it would all be live.
And was this was you were pushing for this based on your experience?
Yeah, well, also just the fact that, again, the best thing for the musician is to be doing it live, not to be doing it to playback. And the nature of rap, it just didn't seem to lend itself to any kind of playback.
Right.
The whole point of it is to be spontaneous. So, you know, he said, well, okay, if that's, you know, what you think it should be. So we set it up so Bob Shaper actually had this fellow come in from LA who set up a big PA system, but he did it with period equipment. You know, big bass boxes and all that. And we ran the turntable, the DJ's turntable, through that system, and obviously got a feed. And in that situation, although I was limited to a stereo Nagra, Bob had a Pro Tools set up, so we were able to split off tracks for well, you know, stereo track for the turntable, and the handheld mics had their own tracks. And then we had a number of audience mics out there, again, for ambience as much as audience.
Sure. They're a character in the scene.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we wanted this to be like a real event, and that's basically what we did. It was a real event. You know, it was as loud as you can imagine it should be, and the challenge was to record it and make it work.
And make it sound cinematic.
Right. So, of course, we had the Pro Tools set up for doing all the multitrack, but I was there with my stereo Nagra. I might have even used just the mono Nagra to make a mix track for dailies.
And do you remember, were you timecode linked, or was this pre-time? Okay, so this was the time.
Yeah.
It was a timecode, not stereo.
Yeah, we had. I think I fed my timecode to the Pro Tools setup. And that was that.
Let's watch it with the caveat that there's just as much language in this clip as there has been in all the other ones. But yeah,
oh boy,
8 Mile.
You got this.
and we got B-Rap. Now, I don't even have to stress how important this is. It's the championship. We at this motherfucker. This is what we came to see. You know what I'm saying? That's why the fuck we in the deep. We represent. We at the shelter, goddammit. It's real. I hope y'all ready. This shit is about to be on the coagulating up in this bitch. All right, hold on. Gotta do this coin toss. And being that Papa Doc is the defending champion, you get to choose. What do you want to do, heads or tails?
Heads.
Heads. Okay. Who goes first?
Let that bitch go first.
Whoa. I can't believe my ears. A lot of hostility. Pumping a lot of anger. All right. Hey, check this out. We got new rules. Being a championship round, each of these cats, they get a minute and a half apiece. I don't know what's gonna happen. We ready? You know what to do? DJ, kick that shit.
Everybody from the 313, put your motherfucking hands up and follow me. Everybody from the 313, put your motherfucking hands up. Look. Now while he stands tough, notice that this man did not have his hands up. This free world's got you gassed up. Now who's afraid of the big bad wolf? 1, 2, 3 into the 4. 1 pop, 2 pop, 3 pop, 4. 4 pop, 3 pop, 2 pops, 1. Your pop, he's pop, no pop. None. This guy ain't no motherfucking MC. I know everything he's got to say against me. I am white. I am a fucking bum. I do live in a trailer with my mom. My boy Future is an Uncle Tom. I do got a dumb friend named Cheddar Bob who shoots himself in his leg with his own gun. I did get jumped by all 6 of you chumps. And we did fuck my girl. I'm still standing here screaming fuck the free world. Don't never try to judge me, dude. You don't know what the fuck I've been through. But I know something about you. You went to Cranbrook, that's a private school. What's the matter, dog? You embarrassed? This guy's a gangster? His real name's Clarence. And Clarence lives at home with both parents. And Clarence's parents have a real good marriage. This guy don't want to battle, he's shook. Cause ain't no such things as halfway crooks. He's scared to death, he's scared to look at his fucking yearbook. Fuck Cranbrook. Fuck a beat, I go a cappella. Fuck a Papa Doc, fuck a clock, fuck a trailer, fuck everybody. Fuck y'all if you doubt me. I'm a piece of fucking white trash, I say it proudly. And fuck this battle, I don't want to win, I'm outie. Here, tell these people something they don't know about me.
How much of that song was made up on the spot versus it was in the script? Like,
No, he he wrote this song. I think he wrote the song and just riffed off it. But you know, it had to be consistent because we had to do it more than one time, just so you could get shots like the wide shots and be able to have a camera up close, which would have been in the wide shot. So there was some level of consistency, but not in, you know, every delivery was slightly different. So hence why, you know, you just wouldn't have wanted to do this in any kind of playback fashion, nor could I imagine how.
It would have been comically bad.
Right. And you'd never have the life, you know, that you have from the crowd and the ambience. Yeah. And it was loud. It was loud, really loud.
Yeah, but the crowd loved it. I mean, they clearly are.
Yeah, I mean, it was
a whole character.
It was like being like at a real concert.
Yeah. Can we talk geeky stuff for a minute?
Yeah.
Do you remember how you mic'd the audience and the specific stuff you used?
I think we still used. I don't think we still used Shep's mics, you know, and I really think we used hypercardioids, which doesn't sound like it would be the logical thing, but you know, not hypercardioids up close, but hypercardioids from a distance, looking out into the group.
Right.
Because you want a little bit of a direct bite, if you will. Some level of rejection of all the loud music so you can get something of the crowd. You know, we used a Electro Handheld that we set for, there's a secret little setting inside it that lets you drop the gain even like another 6 dB because...
The so-called Pavarotti setting.
Yeah. And we geeked it, we kind of cropping it up a bit. You know, we put tape and stuff so it didn't look so new.
Right. Speaking of Sheps, is that your go-to mic in terms of dialogue recording?
Yeah. I mean, to a fault.
Yeah.
Probably,
why do you say that?
Well, I mean, you know, we'll try our hardest to make it work with that. You know, I used the blue as well, but sometimes even outdoors we'll still, if we get a close-up, we'll still try to use the regular Sheps.
And is there a reason why you gravitated towards the Sheps? That hypercardioid, I assume.
Yeah. I just don't think anything else sounds better for dialogue or even music. Nothing that I've ever heard. And every time I hear about, oh, you should hear such and such mic, and I try it out and I go, you know, not the same thing. I mean, I pretty much have been using Shep's mic since '76.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How would you describe the characteristics of Shep's compared to like a Sennheiser 416?
Well, I mean, there are trade-offs. I mean, it's a very full-bodied mic. It's much more susceptible to handling noise, more susceptible to wind noise, because it's this whole capsule nature. Sometimes even humidity becomes an issue, but you know.
In terms of sound quality, how does it differ?
It's just a very warm sounding microphone that will not give up when you come in close. You know, it just has a rich quality which I feel is important, and I don't tend to do very much EQ and low cutting on my mics, and I like giving the re-recording mixer a good full-bodied microphone to work with.
Yeah, very challenging for boom operators.
Yes.
But
yes.
You know, they're the ones that work for you are skilled.
Yeah, like Kira Smith, who works for me, you know, does a great job, and it's challenging sometimes if if you're on a long pole and you're making a lot of movement, but she also agrees that that's the best sounding mic.
Yeah.
You know, every time we try to veer away from it, we find ourselves going back.
Coming back, yeah.
Even for something that's a little wider than you would expect it to work for, we tend to find that because of the amount of body or warmth that that mic has, it actually gives you the impression that it's picking up, oh sorry, should know not to touch the mic. It gives you the impression that you're closer to the subject than you really might expect.
Yeah. The thing that strikes me about the Sheps are how they sound off-axis. They sound completely natural off-axis,
Right.
and I think that helps.
Yep.
Paradoxically,
Yep.
when you're in a reverberant room or wider.
Right.
Looking back at these clips now, if any of these movies were, made in 2018 with 2018 equipment, what would change for you?
Well, it's not, but it's not just the equipment. It's the nature of how we filmed something like that. Everything would change if we shot those movies in a way that is more consistent with what we do nowadays.
In terms of multi-camera?
Multi-cameras and
compressed schedules.
Compressed schedules and maybe some less trained actors and maybe some less trained DPs and directors. I mean, there's so much involved. I've worked with directors who found me, difficult or annoying because I'd always try to get something better or try to find some compromise that would help me get something better. And then after the film is over and they've been to post-production, they call and say, "I'm really sorry, I get it now," and they want me to do their next film. And I say, hopefully with a little more help, But yeah, I mean, that's when you feel like, okay, you've been somewhat vindicated.
It was worth it.
Yeah.
And in terms of multi-track, how has your job changed now that you can record to almost unlimited numbers of tracks on set?
Right. I mean, I still try to work with as few tracks as necessary, and I still mix to track one as if I'm not getting another chance. So I express my disappointment, if I didn't feel like I got something just right, I mean, to myself more than anything, or in my notes.
Right.
But, basically for me, it's still a live recording, with the caveat that I understand that certainly things can be changed, but sometimes those things could be changed not to my favor.
Sure. What sort of relationship do you have with post-production?
Not the same that used to be. I find that I'm less connected to post than I used to be, although I always welcome an offer that they could call me about any particular scene or any question about a microphone used.
Right.
I almost always remember what mic was used and where that mic was for stuff like that. So
in case they need to match to something. Or,
yeah.
And do you ever have the...
There was a time I used to, on shows where that was acceptable, I would go and do the ADR work, not as the mixer, but I would boom the ADR work. And again, allow the actors to move around and use the same microphones.
And you'd have pictures so you could sort of match the mic position. Yeah, that's great. Yeah. That also must have been exciting to be connected to that part of it.
Yeah, it was, and it was fun to see the actors and but that doesn't happen.
They must have been very surprised to see you. Do you ever have the opportunity to sit on mixes these days?
To be honest, no. It almost seems like when that's going on, I'm on something else, and
yeah,
you know.
I think we should throw it to questions. And
questions.
If anybody's watching, and if they have questions, and then also if you guys have questions.
Is there a piece of gear that when that piece of gear came out, it changed the way you worked on set doing your art?
Wow. Well, yeah, I mean, I always, in those earlier days, I had very basic mixers, you know, kind of along the lines of what you see now, like an SQN mixer I had, you know, which had 3 inputs. You know, there was not much else going on with it. I think when I got a Cooper mixer, that really changed what I do pretty dramatically. So I'd say that was...
Why did that change?
Well, it is nice to have a little bit flexibility in terms of the gain structure, the trim structure, low cut when you need it, not have a just basic simple switch that says low cut and that's that.
Right. Linear faders as opposed to the rotors.
Linear faders make a big difference, yeah. So, yeah, that made a big difference. There you go. Hey, there's one.
This is your current setup?
This is my current setup, yep.
And so, did you, Mississippi Burning, they had video taps. Did you have a monitor on your cart? Did they have video taps on this?
Are you kidding me? Video taps?
Yeah.
No.
Not on Mississippi Burning?
No, and we didn't have wireless headphones. I had a cabled box that had 2 headphone outputs with extensions for the director and the script person, and that was it.
And that was it? Nobody, if anybody's second cousin removed,
there was no
up.
such thing. No, there was no such thing. Right. No. Nor did I have any way to do something like that, any more sophisticated. Yeah.
So what was the first film that you worked on that had a video tap where you could have it on your cart?
I swear, I really don't think I can. I mean, I don't know. I can't remember that. You know, it was. I used to also be, unlike what you have now. I used to be on the set. If you can imagine a sound man with his cart on the set.
Like next to the
camera? And I would move according to what the shot was, because I relied on being able to see the angle and what the actors were doing, not just hear what they were doing, but in order to anticipate. If I could see them making a move this way, you know, I might anticipate something related to to their mic or what have you. But so yeah, I used to be. I mean, there had to be some accommodation for me often, you know, and when it couldn't happen, it was really difficult to do my job, because it's literally like being blind and just like.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's no private line.
Yeah, I relied on the fact that I saw what the camera was seeing, and therefore the sound was mixed accordingly.
Right, right. Any other questions?
Do you have any favorite either movies or projects that you've worked on?
Gosh. Well, as painful as it was, 8 Mile was very satisfying, as was Mississippi Burning, and as was Glengarry Glen Ross. I don't know that I mean, wouldn't use the term. They're not enjoyable in that sense. They're enjoyable that ultimately what you did, you felt was you achieved something worthwhile. So I guess in that respect, that would be the answer. There were certainly films I had more fun doing, but you know, they were not the same thing.
That's it for questions. All right. So I think we will wrap this up.
All right.
People are welcome
It's
to
good to
email
wrap.
in questions, and we'll pass them on to you. If,
Okay,
we
good.
could geek out about equipment over email later.
All right, good.
But thank you so much, Danny.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks everybody for
Take care.
watching. So we have a seminar on the new tax regulations and how they affect freelance crew people in particular. It's Sunday, February 18th. It's with Nancy Adams, a CPA. It's going to be here in New York City. We can tell people Frank Sinatra High School. Anyways, it's all on our website, or you could watch it online, but come in person. Video archives at gothamsound.tv. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and please send ideas to info@gothamsound.com. Thank you, everybody, for watching.
Thanks.
Thanks, Danny.
Thank you.